Howdy folks, Spencer here, and today I want to talk about this new MUDs Pilot bundle that we're getting. So before I dive into it, a reminder on the cost of MUDs bundles. There is base pricing, and then there is the sale price that you will see. Now, with anything in the MUD store, never buy it at the base price. Like, here's the base pricing on the screen if you're curious as to what it is, but only ever buy these bundles when there's at least a 50% sale going on. During those 50% sale periods, you will get two different options for this MUDs bundle. You can either get a choice pack that will let you pick three of the options, and that will cost you 14,750 Zen, or just under 150 US dollars. And the other option is a mega bundle that will give you everything in the pack for 30,000 Zen, or 300 US dollars. The options for this specific MUDs bundle are on the ship side, and a reminder, all of these ships from the MUDs bundles are unlocked account wide for you, so you can go and reclaim them on all of your characters as many times as you want. And of course, the ship boxes are bound to you, so you can't go and post them to the exchange. The first ship is the Deimos Pilot Destroyer, which is from the Infinity Lockbox. Then we have the Lost Sirena Heavy Raider, that's from the Infinity Promo Box. Then we have the Undine Cheirax Bio-Warship and Kwejian Pilot Frigate, which are both also from the Infinity Lockbox. And on the consumable side of things, for those of you that are not interested in one or more of the ships, there are 50 Master Keys, 16 Elite Bridge Officer Training tokens, a single Epic Phoenix token, and 10 Ultimate Tech upgrades that you can choose as options from the bundle. But remember, all of these are going to be account bound, so if you pick keys, you're going to have to use them. You cannot go out and sell them. So we're going to take a look now at the ships, and I just mentioned this, but I'll say it again. All of the MUDs bundle ships that you get are account-wide unlocks, so you can claim them over and over again on your characters, just like you could any other normal C-Store ship. And the ship boxes will be bound to you, so you cannot sell them. And I'm not going to be taking a look at the specific impulse hull mod stats, so I will include some links to the wiki pages to each of the ships here for those of you that want to look at those stats a little bit closer. Okay, we're going to take a look at the Deimos Pilot Destroyer first here. And this is a ship that was from the first season of Star Trek Picard, I believe. This was what the synths were flying when they blew up the shipyards above Mars, Utopia Planitia, I think, or whatever. So it's a ship that was shown briefly in Star Trek Picard, and it is in the game as the Deimos Pilot Destroyer, which has a 5-2 weapon setup with an experimental weapon, 4 engineering consoles, 2 science, 5 tactical. Bridge officer wise here, we have a commander TAC with pilot, a lieutenant commander TAC with intel, lieutenant commander engineer, lieutenant science, and ensign universal. For the secondary aspects of this ship, you have the experimental kinetic feedback matrix experimental weapon here. And if I pull up a sheet that breaks down the performance of some experimental weapons, well, this experimental kinetic feedback matrix from the Deimos is second from the bottom, so it's not a good experimental weapon, and you'll probably never end up using it, even if you get this ship. The starship trait is formation flying. This will summon in 2 additional synth destroyers when you hit any distress calls, so for those of you that are looking to get as many pets out on the map as possible, this might be something to look into. And the console is the big thing from this ship. In fact, if you're buying this ship or this entire MUDs bundle at all, you're buying it for this console. And the console is the Immolating Phaser Lance. This has passives on it for plus 15.8% phaser damage and plus 43.8 Starship Shield Pen. And the clicky on it is a phaser lance that has several charges. So the way this works is you start off with 6 charges of the lance, and each shot, which you can fire it once every 5 seconds if you want, each shot will consume 1 charge, and the charge will take 20 seconds to regenerate. So this is a console that can do a lot of damage. Every high-end DPS build is using this console because it's also really good for keeping the universal design starship trait up all the time, and that is the trait from the crossfield refit. So it's a very popular combo. Every high-end DPS build, even if they're not using phasers, is using this console alongside universal designs. This is the only phaser lance in the game also that actually does a substantial amount of damage. This console will do a lot of damage on a build that has weapons, or that has phaser weapons on it, and even ones that don't have phasers on. Like, I use this on my disruptor builds. I use these on my torpedo builds, and the torpedo builds, as a reminder, they don't have any weapon power. Torpedo builds dump all of their power into aux, and then the rest usually into like engines. And it still does 40 to 50k DPS on most of the high-end torp builds. I've seen people running this on phaser builds, like phaser cannon scatter volley builds, and they still get like they get like 80 to 100k DPS out of it. So if you figure out how to use the console effectively, because it does also have an AoE effect wherever you shoot, if there's any other targets around that target, they will take some damage. Like if you time this right, it does extremely well. So it is a really good console if you like phaser builds. If you like to use phasers especially, you can boost this up quite a bit on a phaser build. So this is a ship that many of you are going to immediately be picking up this bundle for, because that lance is just insanely potent. And the ship itself does not have any special maneuvers when you use the pilot stuff on it. It's just fairly generic pilot maneuver animations here, so nothing special there in that regard. Now let's move on to the next ship here, the Lost Sirena. And the Lost Sirena is a promotional ship, and it is the only promo ship in this bundle. Promo ships, for reference, are usually much harder to acquire. They're usually much more expensive. In some cases, promo ships will cost as much as, what a MUDs bundle will cost, so if there's a promo ship in a MUDs bundle, it usually makes sense to grab it just because it would cost so much to obtain normally. So the Lost Sirena is a ship that we saw in Star Trek Picard. This is the ship that Picard was flying around in quite a bit in the first couple seasons there. And it's an interesting ship in the game here. It's got a 5-1 weapon setup with an experimental weapon, and the experimental weapon, let me just get that out of the way, is the coordinated hole piercer. If I go back to this page talking about experimental weapons, it's literally the bottom of the list. So it's not a good experimental weapon. It's not one that you're likely going to use, especially if it's the bottom of the list performance-wise. The experimental weapon, you can just forget about. Now, for the rest of the ship stats here, it's got 2 engineering consoles, 4 science, and 5 tactical. Bridge officer-wise is really quite interesting. We have a commander TAC with pilot, a lieutenant commander universal with intel, a commander universal, and a lieutenant universal. So you have a lot of flexibility with what you can do with this ship. You can put any commander in there that you want alongside that commander pilot or the commander TAC. Very flexible ship. It does lose a bridge officer though, in exchange for having the 2 commander seats there, but really an interesting setup here, and it does give you many options with how to build this ship. The starship trait on this is maintained to regulation. Every time you hit a captain ability, it will cleanse 1 debuff off of you and give you a recharge time reduction on bridge officer abilities of 10%. So it's an interesting trait. Might be useful in some PvP scenarios, but I think in PvE, you wouldn't really have room for a trait like this. And the console is Fundamental Field Replicator. This has passives on it for engineering, science, and TAC readiness, so it's some additional cooldown reduction for bridge officer abilities. And the clicky on this is Photonic Ambush, and when you hit this, it will summon in a ton of photonic copies of your ship, or a ton of photonic allies, 9 of them specifically. They will each be equipped with phaser beams. They'll have beam overload, fire at will, cannon scatter volley, and lock trajectory available to them. And the last thing on the click key for the console here is that it reduces bridge officer ability recharge by 1% each second for 30 seconds. So it's not really a DPS console, but it is something that you might have fun with, especially if you're trying to spam out as many pets into the map as possible, because this is a console that can be used on any ship you have. Now, with the pilot maneuvers for this ship, I don't believe it has any like special mechanics here. I don't think the ship sometimes with some of these pilot ships they'll have special animations, and I think in this case it's a bit more generic. Yeah, so it's no special pilot animations on this ship. Now let's take a look at the next ship here, and that is going to be the Undine Cheirax. This is the tier 6 version of the old Undine Nicor ship, for those of you that remember the original Undine ships here. This does also have pilot maneuvers. You know, all of these ships do have a commander pilot that are in this bundle. And the visuals of this ship just really are not going to work for a lot of people. But if you are into these Undine ships, then this is definitely a ship to consider. And pilot maneuver-wise, it has nothing special, it looks like. So let's have it go to the side here quick before I look at the stats. Yeah, it's basic pilot animations, nothing special. Okay, this ship is a 4-4 weapons setup. It's got 2 engineering consoles, 4 science, 5 tactical. The bridge officer setup on this is also only 4 bridge officers. That was something unique about the Undine ships, and they carried it over here. So you've got a commander TAC with pilot, a lieutenant commander universal with intel, and a lieutenant commander engineer, and a lieutenant commander science. So the difference between this and the Lost Sirena is the Lost Sirena loses a lieutenant commander seat. It gets downgraded to a lieutenant, and in exchange, one of the lieutenant commanders becomes a commander. So that's the difference between this and the Lost Sirena. And also the Lost Sirena had a bunch of universal seats. This does have fixed Psi and engineering seats. The console on this thing is the Enhanced Fluidic Energy Focusing Array. This has passives on it for +3 weapon power setting, plus 17.1 starship hull capacity. So not really that big of a passive there. And then the clicky on this is going to be that big anti-proton, or the big Undine anti-proton shot that you see them do that will usually do a fair bit of damage. This is like the enhanced version of the old tier 5 console, so I don't know how this actually does damage-wise. My guess is it's probably not actually that great, even if you boost it up with anti-proton, but you know, maybe if you're doing like a full-on Undine build and you boost this up with anti-proton and you run the console off of the Kwejian, the other Undine ship that exists in the game, you might be able to get something out of it, but it is locked to the Undine ship, so it's not going to be that relevant for most of you. And this ship is interesting to me for the trait that it has, Omega Bond. So this will give you you and your allies a buff whenever you hit pilot abilities or attack power and Omega. And the buff is plus 10% bonus all damage. So that's a Cat 2 damage boost there, which is pretty huge. And it's plus 15 defense. So this looks interesting to me from a support build or support playstyle point of view. This is not the type of trait that most of you would benefit from, but if you were doing high-level coordinated runs and you had somebody using a tank or support with pilot abilities on it that could take advantage of this, then this might be a trait to consider. You know, I've thought about this ship for my Kwejian debuff tank builds too, so this could be an interesting trait for that playstyle, but the majority of you are not going to be that interested in the ship, given it's a 4-4, has a console that is locked to it, and the trait is fairly niche. But for those of you that like the Undine ships, might be a ship to consider. Now let's take a look at the last ship here. And this is the Kwejian pilot Frigate. This was book ship in Star Trek Discovery. And they did a lot of work on the model for this. In fact, I don't think you can quite see it because of the map I'm on, but if you get in the right lighting here, And you look in the window here, it's got the cockpit fully detailed, and you can even see the cat standing on the like desk right in front of this window. I can't really see it because of the lighting on this map. Let me try to set the FOV different here. Let's go to 15 FOV and see if I can see in there. Yeah, so you can see it's a little bit detailed in there. Can't really see where the cat is, but supposedly the cat is in there somewhere. Just cannot see it from this point of view. Might be right there, bottom left. So it is a very detailed ship model, and it does have unique pilot animations, which are going to be of high interest to many of you. So if I go forward here with this ship, it like breaks apart and everything. So they have put a lot of work into the pilot animations of the ship, and I think many of you are going to want to consider it for the visual animations alone. Now let's take a look at the stats of the ship itself. It's got a 5-3 weapon setup. It's got 4 engineering consoles, 3 science, and 4 tac. And the bridge officers here, this is a pilot frigate. And for those of you not familiar with frigates, frigates get raider flanking. So this is a ship that has a few different things going for it. So we have a commander engineer with pilot, a lieutenant universal with command, an ensign universal, and 2 lieutenant commander universals. So again, this is a very flexible ship with regards to the bridge officer layout. And in addition to that, you know, it's got a 5-3 weapon setup. It's got a commander engineer and is classified as a frigate. So it still has some cruiser commands. In this case, it has the weapon system efficiency cruiser command, which is very beneficial. It is a frigate, which means it has flanking. So you're going to get a flanking damage bonus from the ship if you're flanking your enemy. And it's got a battle cloak with a really nice animation, because it's the 32nd century Federation battle cloak. So visually, this ship has a lot of things going on for it, and it's also got a lot of secondary perks that look very interesting. The trait from this ship is called Proximity Alert, and it will improve your survivability based on the rank of nearby enemies. So this gives a scaling buff that will give you physical and kinetic damage resistance, extra defense, it will reduce your threat generation, and it will give you some healing based on the rank of nearby enemies. So it's an interesting trait from a survivability point of view. I'm not sure how practical that would actually be, though, for most of you that are running in-game content. You know, I don't think you would find that much use of the boost it provides at an endgame level. And the console on this thing is the Smasher Assembly. So this has passives on it for plus 11.6% cooldown reduction on pilot bridge officer abilities, plus 10 accuracy and defense, and the clicky on it will basically send parts of your ship out to go out and ram the enemy. So if I recall, this is like a really fun console to use. It's not something that's going to do a ton DPS wise, but it does look really interesting. And I think it's locked to this ship, so it's not something you're going to be able to go out and use on other ships, but it does look quite fun. You can also... So here's how the console looks when you use it. It's really neat. So it'll send parts of your ship out flying at the target. It's a toggle here too. So if I had an enemy targeted, it would send parts of my ship flying towards that target. And then there's also the morph reversal ability that this ship has, which when you hit it, it will give you some buffs for a couple seconds. It will also turn your weapons off, your weapons and aux power offline for 2 seconds, but afterwards you'll get a crit chance, a crit severity boost for 4 seconds. So if I hit this, it completely turns my ship around. And that is a passive just built into the ship. I'll remove the console. Yep, that's passive and built right into the ship. So honestly, this ship has a lot of really unique features going to it, and I foresee many of you picking this as the third option because the ship itself would actually perform really well too, between it having a 5-3 weapon setup, that very flexible bridge officer seating, um, and the cruiser command, the raider flanking, the battle cloak. It just has a lot of really unique aspects to it that makes it a very strong option for this bundle. Now, let's go back to the PowerPoint here. And before I dive into my recommendations, let's recap the consumables. So, two important notes here. All of the consumable items are bound to you. And if you want to select them multiple times from the choice pack, you can. So, the options here for the consumables are 50 master keys, which have a value of about $50. 16 elite bridge officer trading tokens. These have a value of about $48. I really wouldn't recommend the bridge officer tokens from this. I feel like if you waited for a good sale in the C store, you'd be able to get them at a much cheaper price. You can also pick one epic phoenix token. That's valued at about 7,200 Zen, given that the drop rate on an epic phoenix token is about 1 in 900. And the last consumable option is 10 ultimate tech upgrades. So that would let you upgrade any 10 items you want up to Mark 15 epic quality. So the value on that is going to vary depending on what you're upgrading because different things cost different amounts to upgrade. So my recommendation here is number one, the Deimos Pilot Destroyer, because the immolating phaser lance is really good. Number two is the Lost Sirena Heavy Raider, because it's a promo ship, which means that it is very hard to acquire. And it also has a very unique and flexible setup. It's got two commanders on it, one of the few ships that has two commander seats, and one of them is a commander with universal options there, so you can make it engineering, science, tactical, do whatever you want with it. And for the third option, I think for most of you, it's going to be the Kwejian Pilot Frigate. At the end of the day, I think that ship is going to appeal to a wider audience. The Undine Cheirax does have some interesting niche aspects to it also, like the starship traits being really interesting for support builds. But really, I think at the end of the day, comparing the Undine to the Kwejian just has so many unique things going for it that I think for like 95% of you that will probably be the best third option for this bundle. So if you have any thoughts, if you disagree with what I'm, recommending here, if you would go with something else, feel free to let me know. But I think the Deimos, La Sirena, and the Kwejian is probably the best option for most of you. And I think at $150, getting those three ships on the count-wide unlock, compared to what it would cost to get them, via the traditional gambling options out there, I don't think it's the worst deal out there. So let me know what you guys think down below. But a reminder, of all the options here. This is one of the bundles where, if they ever did a 75% sale, I could see myself going out and getting the mega bundle because all four of the ships interest me, to be honest. Like, there's a lot of these mods bundles that we get where 2 to 3 of the ships are fairly mediocre. But this is one where I can safely say that all 4 ships are interesting in different ways. So, once again, let me know what you think down below. But that's going to be it for this video. So, hit the right button there. Thank you all for watching, and stay tuned for more Stowe content coming soon. It's going to be it for now. See you guys next time.